You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Brian Kelly, Nick Saban on Wednesday on the SEC Coaches Teleconference. And not surprisingly, a lot of the conversation with those two coaches, whenever they're asked to speak this week, is going to be a lot about Bryce Young, that Alabama offense, and how you limit it. Brian Kelly today was asked about Bryce Young, who he called the best player in college football, which no argument from me here, and how you defend the reigning Heisman Trophy winner.
There's no real good answer. If I had one, I certainly would be voicing it. That he is, in many instances, you can't defend him because he's so elusive and he wants to throw the football. I mean, he could take off so many times, but he's trying to find receivers down the field and just has a great awareness, a sense. He's a true quarterback. He's not a scramble around guy that just throwing it up there. He's very intentional about everything that he does. He's not taking sacks. He's the Heisman Trophy winner, and he should be. He's the best player in college football.
I agree with Brian Kelly. He may not be having the best season this year, in part because, look, he was injured in the Arkansas game. He missed the Texas A&M game, and so his numbers aren't what they were a year ago. He doesn't have the receiving options that he did a year ago with Mechie and Jamison Williams, a veteran guy like Slade Bolden. You look at Alabama's receivers this year, and they have struggled to find those dynamic play guys. And I do think that is one pretty key difference this year from years past. You don't see Ruggs and Judy and guys like Mechie and Williams or Amari Cooper. Those guys aren't there this year. Devontae Smith, Heisman Trophy winner, right? I mean, you don't see that guy in this receiving group. They have very talented guys, but that matchup with LSU's defensive backs against those Alabama receivers and Bryce Young trying to throw the football, as you heard Brian Kelly say there, really kind of is the game, which is why, I think the B.J. Ojulari, Harold Perkins combo with the two of them together is so key, because I think where LSU has an advantage in this game, or let me not say an advantage, but where they match up well, is LSU is so athletic in that defensive front seven that they can contain Bryce Young so that he doesn't just kill him with his feet, even if he extends the plays, almost like the way they used to handle Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M. You create the pocket, you don't let him beat you with his feet, you play coverage in the secondary, and you make him bide his time and throw it at tight windows. And that was a successful recipe then, and I think LSU, especially with guys like Ojulari and Perkins, are kind of equipped to pull that off. And Brian Kelly talked about those two guys today.
Well, we have the ability to make defensive calls to have them on the field the whole time. So we just wanted to add that into our defensive call structure to make sure if that's what we felt was best for our team, that they could be on the field at the same time. We had to do that in certain situational calls, meaning, third down or some nickel or dime situations. Now we can play base defense with both of them on the field. So now we have the ability to do that at any time, and that's really the biggest difference.
I've been asked in a lot of radio interviews this week, was there a light switch moment? What's the point where LSU got better? My answer has been pretty consistent. I don't think it's been a moment or a game. I think it's the cumulative effect of Brian Kelly and this coaching staff getting to know their players. For example, we've talked a lot about the offensive line. That's a pretty obvious one. In 8 games, you've had 6 different line combinations. Some of that was injury. Some of that was shuffling guys to find your best 5. But they've settled on it, and now they're playing better. It just took some time, right? Similarly, they started this season with Mike Jones as the starting Mike linebacker. Mike Jones was a team captain. He came to SEC Media Days. Now Mike Jones is barely on the field. Not a knock on Mike Jones. Please don't misunderstand me. It's just they realized Baskerville as the Mike, Greg Penn on the field. Now you take Penn off, you put Perkins on with Ojulari, and that's going to be your best combo. They've learned their talent. So it's not been a singular moment or thing that's happened. It's been just what Brian Kelly described there. This coaching staff has gotten to know their roster better, who works well together, who can do what, and now having them on the field to execute a game plan. And that's true on both sides of the ball, but in particular against Bryce Young, I think it's important. And when you heard Brian Kelly say, if I had a plan, I'd let him know. But there have only been a couple of times this year where Bryce Young has looked like he struggled. One of those was earlier this year against Texas. And Bryce Young's stat line that day was 27 of 39 for 213, a touchdown, and no interceptions. Bama scored just 20 points that game. They had 10 in the first quarter and 10 in the fourth quarter. They had some red zone struggles, but largely he protected the football. The problem they had in that game is Texas and their defensive front seven did exactly what I just described, like what LSU used to do against Johnny Manziel. On that day, Texas they only sacked Bryce Young twice, but they had 6 TFLs and they had 7 quarterback hurries. They rarely let him get into a rhythm. They made him move off of his spot, throw on the run, get uncomfortable, and made those receivers make plays as well. And that's been the sort of disadvantage for Alabama this year. There was a play in that game, and it was in the first half, might have been the first quarter. It was a 3rd and long for Alabama. They were just inside of Texas territory, and Bryce Young pulled off a Houdini act where he dodged, ducked, dipped, and dived and dodged, and ended up throwing a ball beautifully over the middle, which would have put Alabama down around the red zone, and the receiver dropped it. That dynamic receiving talent hasn't been there really consistently for Alabama this year, and that may be the big matchup, where it's LSU's corners, Alabama's receivers, both are not at the level that they've been in years past. That's going to be a key, what they did that day. The other game where you could kind of look and say Bryce Young was having a tough time was the Arkansas game. Now, he got knocked out of that game with injury, and now Alabama ended up winning 49-26. And late in that ball game, if you remember, they had 3 70-yard runs. Jalen Milroe had one, and then Jahmyr Gibbs had 2. And so Bama just bursted for a 21-point fourth quarter after Arkansas had gotten within 2. But before Bryce Young left that game, he was just 7 of 13 with a touchdown and a pick. It wasn't a great day for Bryce Young. Similarly, remember, Arkansas was the conference's worst pass defense. But what they did was they basically decided we're not going to lose in that second level. And ultimately, late in the game, Jahmyr Gibbs made you hurt them running the football. And ended up with 206 yards on 18 carries. So it's somewhat of a pick your poison. And Jahmyr Gibbs' emergence has certainly made teams pay if they decide to play coverage against Bryce Young. But the thing where LSU may match up well is because the defensive front seven is so athletic, they might be able to contain Bryce Young and that running game while playing coverage in the secondary, similar to what you saw them do against Ole Miss. For all the concern about Ole Miss's ability to run, LSU throttled that running game. They only allowed 3 runs of more than 10 yards. I believe the long of the day was like 17. It was a day where LSU executed a game plan that they might be able to execute similarly against Alabama on Saturday at Tiger Stadium. There is a path. I'm not saying you shut down Alabama. I'm not saying you shut out Alabama, but Texas held them to 20. There is a blueprint to do it. Executing it against the likes of Bryce Young is easier said than done, but there was a blueprint to do it. And LSU might just have the defensive ability that matches up well against that Alabama offense. Bigger question then becomes, can LSU offensively keep pace? And that will remain to be seen on Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.